Welcome everyone to Web Development Wing workshop for APK month. Here's Gupta, coordinator of Web Development Wing. That reminds me, I couldn't attend Haven orientation, so this is the first time I'm meeting you guys. Welcome to Triple ITA. या तो स्टार्ट करते हैं आज. This is a little low. वॉइस लो है क्या?
यस सर, थोड़ी सी लो आ रही है।
हाँ सर।
देखता हूँ फिर एक. Yeah, I will use it. Give me a second to fix the volume. अब आवाज कैसी है? अब थोड़ी बेटर है क्या?
हाँ सर, बढ़िया बढ़िया।
ठीक है सर।
Cool. स्लाइड शो. एक सेकंड, यार चैट मिसिंग है. Cool. So today is just an introductory class. First we'll go over what is web. So before we start web development, I think you should know a bit of the basic of what is web. Most of you probably don't know. Then we'll start a bit with the intro to web development, like what parts are involved, how different things function. And then we'll come to what these set of workshops entail for you. We'll go over what is the syllabus and what is the timeline. So yeah, today is going to be a chill session. We will not be doing any coding, so I suppose there won't be much doubts or anything. So just chill, lay back, and then tomorrow onwards we'll get into the coding stuff. But today's session is still equally important because otherwise tomorrow's session won't make sense at all, right? So let's start with what is web. So yeah, what is the web? So first let's get to the problem, right? We want to connect computers. We want computers to talk to each other, to send each other data. I'm sitting here, you are sitting at your home. We want to send each other data. So how do two computers send each other data? And the simplest solution is just you connect them with wires, right? You've connected the two with wires, you can send anything through that wire, and now those two computers can talk to each other. But what if we want more computers, right? So we just connect them all. Let's say we add two more computers. Now all of them are interconnected. All four computers can send data to each other. Now you're probably wondering why I have interconnected and it's not like just one is connected to the rest of the three and it can act as the host. The problem is who acts as the host, right? Why is my computer going to take the responsibility? We will share the PPT, don't worry. And Rohan, we will get to that at the end. You don't need to send the doubts right now. I'll mention when you can ask questions, right? So, okay, we have connected these four computers, but again, this interconnection is getting a little complicated, right? Within four computers, it feels complicated to us. So, yeah, this is how a normal small networks look like. At the between, there is a network switch. Sometimes it can also be a router. So this switch is acting as the central authority, central broker, and it is passing the messages to all the four computers, right? Now, this is extremely small scale, right? These are just four computers. We want to connect the whole world, right? So how do you connect everyone? Boom. This is what you call the internet. All those computers that now you take the example of those four computers and now scale it up to the entire world. That is the network of networks that is called the internet. Okay. So that's it. That's what the internet is. However, okay. Okay. No, however, that part comes later. So there is one problem, right, with this. There are so many interconnected computers. How do you find out which computer is which and where it is, right? Let's say I want to send document to Garvit, right? And in these large pool of computers, I don't know where Garvit's computer is, which one is Garvit's computer, how do I send that data? So we gave unique addresses to computers. Exactly, Sriram. IP addresses. So each computer connected to a network has an IP address. Okay, a computer does not have an IP address by default. It has an IP address when it's connected to a network. So you right now have an IP address, whether you're on your phone, whether you're on your computer, your laptop, any device that is connected to an internet, connected to a network has an IP address. And this is the sample format of how it looks like. Okay, 192.168.1.34. And this identifies a computer. I can use your IP address, your computer's IP address, to talk to your computer. Okay, but of course this is very hard to remember, right? I won't remember this huge number. So what we came up with is called domain names. So any domain, so for example, google.com is a domain name, facebook.com, IIITA.ac.in is a domain name. All these are domain names which are just masks for your IP address. Okay, so when you go to google.com is basically just a name given to the IP address of the server where google.com is hosted. All the website of google.com is. Okay, so that's what domain names are. So there is basically a large central table which says, okay, google.com, this IP address, facebook.com, this IP address, let's say, whatsapp.com, this IP address. And so when you in your browser, you type google.com, it first checks that table, picks out that IP address and sends your request to that computer. That's how the internet works. Okay, that is the meaning of a domain name, that is the meaning of an IP address. So yeah, that is the absolute basics of what you need to know about the internet, right? But what if I told you that the internet and the web are not the same thing? Okay, that may come as a surprise to some people. Some people might know it, but the internet and the web are not the same thing. So what we learned was internet is just the network of networks, right? It's just a connection between all the computers. But but the way the internet works is it's just a connection. You can talk in any way you like between these computers. So there are many different protocols in which you can type in many different ways, in many different formats. So the web is just one of them. Okay, the web is one of the protocols within the internet that is specifically known as the HTTP protocol. Uh, now this stuff might feel a little intimidating to some people here, but yeah, don't worry. This is the almost the deepest part we'll go to. We won't go any further in this stuff, so hang with me here. Yeah, so when you type into a browser, right, if you remember, like these days modern browsers don't have this, but you type https:// google.com, right? HTTP or HTTPS. So that is you telling your browser that I want to use the HTTP protocol. HTTP and HTTPS are the same thing. HTTPS is just the secure version. So you are telling your browser, I want to connect to google.com using the HTTP protocol. Okay, does that make sense? I think so. The browser address now makes a lot more sense to you, right? HTTPS is the protocol, google.com is the domain, which is yeah, I'll get to what a protocol is. So is the domain, and so that domain just signifies which computer you're connecting to, right? So the web basically use this protocol to transmit web pages and interact with each other. So to answer your question, what is a protocol? A protocol is basically just a defined set of rules and defined set of formats in which two people will communicate, right? So HTTP, what HTTP does is it defines the format in which a request will be sent. If you send a web request, it defines, okay, you have to give me these things in this specified format, and I will reply to you with these things in this specified format. Okay, that is what a protocol is. So there are many different protocols. There is FTP protocol, there is SMTP. So one of them is HTTP that is used in the web. Okay. So yeah, so browsers such as Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox, when you access web documents, web pages, it happens through these protocols, this protocol HTTP, and that is what the web is, right? So here is a diagram of, not a diagram, a flowchart, I guess, of how a typical web request looks like under HTTP. So on your computer, you open your browser and you type a URL. That looks like HTTP colon slash slash, let's say, shreyasgupta.in. Okay, you open my website. So now, first thing that happens is, uh, yeah. So the first thing that happens is first your browser will send that uh, protocol, so send that request to the table, the domain name table that we talked about. It's called the DNS. It will figure out shreyasgupta.in, which IP address is that connected to. Okay, which IP address, which computer does that signify? Then your browser will send your request through the protocol to that computer. Then my computer will accordingly return some data to you, return my website to you, and then your browser will show that website to you. Okay, that's how it works. So after my presentation, someone else, I think Aditya, will take over and show you a live demo. Can website not following HTTP work? What do you mean? We'll show you a live demo, and at that time, this will make a lot more sense. Is HTTP mandatory? So HTTP is mandatory, but the thing is that the modern browsers in Google Chrome right now, if you go, you type google.com, it will work. Why? Because Google Chrome will automatically append the HTTP for you. But like, let's say, okay, go right now, type google.com, let it load. After it is loaded, you select the whole URL and you will see there is HTTP there. Okay. If I show you right now, actually, let me try. My whole browser is visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I went to google.com, and if I double click and I check the your URL, as you can see, HTTPS is there. I don't know if it's clearly visible. HTTPS is there. So there are many protocols. There is FTP protocol, which is file transfer protocol. It's used to send files. Uh, No, all of these protocols are in use. FTP is very common, SMTP, and I can't remember some few others. But for example, these are used in emails. Then there is WSS, which is for WebSockets. So there are many protocols. Just the HTTP is the most common one, and that is the one we are working with. Okay, in web development, HTTP is the main one. There are other protocols that are not relevant to us, but they are in use. They are actively in use. Okay. So yeah. So introducing, yeah, one thing I forgot to say was about clients and servers. Okay, so in how the web works is everything, all computers are there, right? But there is a distinction. One computer acts as a client, one computer acts as a server. Okay, so your computer, when you're sending a request to google.com, you are the client because you are requesting data. And the computer and the google.com's computer is the server. because it is sending you the data. So there is a distinction between computers. When the one who is sending the request is called as the client, the one who is receiving and responding to the request is known as the server. Okay, so this is an important distinction you need to know. Yeah, so that's enough jargon about the web. As I said, we will not go too deep into this because it can go like we can go very deep, and you will go deep into this in what is that? In semester 4, you will have the computer networking course. There you will learn a lot more about the deep internals of this. But yeah, but with the काफी boring course है, इसलिए we'll not go into it here. So, and now we'll jump into web development, right? So we know a bit about the web, we'll jump into web development. But before that, let's take any doubts you may have. कोई doubt है तो बता दो इस वक्त till here. No doubt.
So there's one doubt, how IP addresses are generated.
Does IP address depend on? एक सेकंड देना मेरे को. Sir, web server, which server? Who is holding this? Repeat client server again. Hi. Yeah. ठीक है, मोस्टली चीज़ रिपीट करनी है. एक सेकंड देना मेरे को रिप्लाई. गिव मी 1 second. Okay. So what were the questions? Okay, first let's take this. Once again, the difference between web and internet. Okay. So internet, okay. So internet is just the network of networks. If my computer is connected to your computer through a, let's say, a wire, that is a small internet. Okay, you can think of it that way. Now, when my computer and your computer are connected, there are many ways we can transfer data, right? There is no particular way. I mean, like I can send you different kinds of files. I can send them in different formats, right? I can send, so let's say, how do you explain formats? So, okay, this might not make a lot of sense. Hmm. So by formats, I mean different. Uh, how do I explain this now?
सर वो कुछ .png ऐसे करके कुछ बता दीजिए.
हाँ वैसे कर लेते हैं. So I can send you data in many way, right? Let's say I want to send you some content. Okay, I can send you a text file. I can send you a doc file. I can send you, let's say, a PPT file even. I can send you many types of files. But I have created a standardized protocol. Let's call it Shreyas protocol, whatever. And in that protocol, I have defined that we will only exchange text documents. And in the text documents, you have to send this in particular defined format, right? So this now is a protocol. It's called the Shreyas protocol. And when we exchange data, we have to use the Shreyas protocol. So when you are using this particular protocol, then you are, so just the connection is called the internet. But when you use a particular protocol, in the web's case, that is the HTTP protocol, that becomes the web. I hope that makes sense. So there are many ways to exchange data. Web uses a particular format for that. So there was one question: does IP address change every time we connect to internet? Yes. Uh, let's say if you notice, like many, like our internet service providers don't give us a static IP address. They can give us, there is an option, but usually they don't. So let's say you have your laptop open right now, and if you go and check what is your IP address, so it will, just search on Google what is your IP address. Your IP address will be shown. Now tomorrow, let's say you restart your computer and you check again, your IP address will be different. Protocol is not equal to command, no. I think I did explain protocol properly. Okay, these doubts are the repeated doubts. We'll take them at the end if we can. And so there were more. Wait. IP address is bounded to our computer. Yes. अच्छा ये तो आदित्य ने ही लिखा है अरे. How is IP address generated? IP address. So IP address is like it's not random. It's assigned by like authorities. I don't know the exact name. Something IANA. वो Google कर लेना. But it's assigned. First of all, it's the router. It is assigned to the router, whatever router you may have at home. Then all your devices at your home connect to your router, right? So the router individually assigns them different IP addresses. So when you have, let's say, your laptop, your phone, your PC, even your TV, all are connected to your Wi-Fi router, all four of them will have different IP addresses that have been assigned to them by the router. Uh, what is the work of VPN? Little off topic. We can cover this at the end if you want. So client and server, last doubt, what is client and server? हमने पूछा था. तो client and server is nothing. It's just a denotion. ठीक है? Then there are two computers. One is sending data. One is receiving data. So the one who is receiving data, that is the client. The one who is sending data, that is the server. That's it. There is no uh, structural difference. It is just how we denote names to computers. Does IP address change if you use different ISPs? Yes. Dark web is very different thing which is not relevant to us. Okay, dark web does not work like this diagram, and we can cover that later if you want. अभी आगे बढ़ते हैं. I think that's enough doubts for now. Does IP address change if I change different web browser? No. VPN just changes IP address. VPN, okay. At the end, I'll cover what a VPN does. Okay. Okay. I think that's enough jargon about the web. So let's start with some web development. Okay, we know a bit about the web. Let's see how to develop websites for the web, which is what you guys are here for, right? Intro to web development. So simply put, web development refers to building, creating, and maintaining websites. I think that was plainly obvious. So yeah, so there are two main parts of a website. There can be more parts, but to you only two parts are relevant. The broad distinction is front end and back end. Okay. So what the front end does, so basically when you open a site, right now, if you open any site, you open my site, shreyasgupta.in, everything that you see on your browser, that is the front end. Okay, everything that your browser is showing you, everything that you are interacting with, any button, any scrolling, any text box, anything, that is the front end. Front end is basically what is delivered to the client. If you remember the client server distinction that we did, everything that is delivered to the client that you are viewing on your computer, on your browser, that is the front end. And then what the backend is backend is the all the work, all the logic being done by the server. So all the behind the scenes logic, it basically, let's say, it stores all the data that is being sent to the front end. It is doing all the logic. Let's say you're on Facebook and you click like on someone's post, right? So when you click like, that button is on front end. But then what the front end does is it sends that request to the backend. Now the backend is handling that, okay, I need to add another like to this person's post. It will update the data. And in every person's computer, whenever they open the site, they see, okay, this person has liked this post. That is done, handled by the backend. Okay, is front end like designing interfaces? Pretty much yes. So the interface that you see, that is the front end. uh, Is front end back end related to UI UX? So UX mm, UX is not entirely front end because it can involve back end too. But yes, the entire UI that you see, that is the front end. So एक सिर्फ definition से अभी उतना clear नहीं होगा. We'll get to a demo. There it will make a bit more sense. So yeah, so basically front end is client side on your browser, whatever you see, that is front end, and back end is server side. Okay, back end is server side. Everything that is being handled on the server that can be related to the data, that can be related to uh, any kind of logic that may need to be handled, that is by the backend. Okay. So this diagram, I think it should already make sense to you. So the user, you interact with the front end, and the front end is showing you the data. Okay. And then whenever you are interacting with the front end is requesting data from the backend, which is on the server, and this backend is returning the data to the front end, which is being displayed to you. Okay. Front end is not the browser. The browser is showing you the front end. That's a better way to put it. Does that make sense? The browser is showing you the front end. This slide looks very clean. It does look clean. That's true. Yeah, so this diagram makes sense, right? You are on your browser, the browser is showing you the website, and you are interacting with it. Whenever you are doing some interaction, the front end is requesting, sending that request to the backend, and the backend is doing anything that any logic that needs to happen. It is sending back the data to the front end, and the front end is showing you the data, right? Again, this will make much more sense in a demo that we'll do at the end. This also kind of makes sense. बैकएंड में फिगर किस चीज का है वेब सर्वर इज रिलेटेड टू फ्रंट नो सो सर्वर is usually related to backend. Yeah, so server is backend. Backend is server sided. Okay. Backend is like coding, front end is designing. No, front end also requires a lot of coding, but front end also requires design. Front end requires designing and coding more. Backend requires only coding. Uh, right. What is the backend में figure किस चीज का? That is just a computer, just a CPU. Yeah, I guess all that. Cool. एक second में ना. Yeah. So we'll get to more deep into front end and back end. So let's get into components of front end. Yeah. So there are three main components of the front end. HTML, CSS, and JS. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. JS stands for JavaScript. All these three are languages. HTML is CSS are markup languages. JavaScript is a programming language. All three of these languages are all the three are extremely important, and these three make up the front end. And yeah, so this accurately represents what these three do. Okay, HTML is responsible for all the content, any kind of content that you see that is being written through HTML, and then CSS handles the presentation, that okay, what color this should be, or where this element should be. All that happens through CSS. Okay, and JavaScript then handles all the logic. So any kind of interacting you are doing with the website, that is being handled through JavaScript. So the diagram on the right perfectly summarizes it. Uh, that HTML is basically the skeleton and the structure, and the JS is your entire neural system, your brain, right? And CSS is the presentation. Cool. Yeah, so we'll get to, I see some doubts. We'll take those doubts at the end. There's not much left anyway. So now we'll get into the components of backend. Okay. So there can be again plenty of components in the backend. There are two main that you need to worry about right now. That is the server and that is the database. Okay. So the server is the main app. Basically, let's call it an app that is listening to all the requests and responding to them. Okay. So when your browser is sending a request to, let's say, shreyasgupta.in, I have a server which is basically an app which is hearing for these requests. It listens to, okay, it it hears, okay, Anshul has requested uh, some data. So my server will then see appropriately respond with some data, right? So that is what the server is doing. It is handling all the logic. And the second component is a database. A database is the place for storing the data, right? Any kind of data. When you, let's say you're making a post on Facebook, that post, all the content that is stored in a database, all your user data, right? Your ID, password, all that is stored in the database. And let's say you are logging in, right? Let me, I guess, explain an example. When you log in, you send a request to you. In the front end, it shows you the form, right? It wants you to enter the username. It wants you to enter the password. You enter the username and password. You click login. Now that request is now sent to the server, right? It sends that request with the username and password to the server. The server sees this. Then the server contacts the database. The server asks the database, does this username have this password? The database then compares it to the records it has, because it has records of everyone, all the data the database is storing. It will compare. If it's true, it will return, let's say, yes. And then the server will return back yes. The server takes information. The server stores information from the database and it returns information, updates information from the database. How server and database contact each other? Server and database can, I think it contacts over through the internet only. But like, for example, server and database can be uh, on the same machine. Usually they are on the same machine. Then it's there is no latency. Server front-end, database backend. No, as I said, the server and database both comprise of the backend. Okay, there are a lot more parts in the backend than there are in the front end. Front end as a whole just has three languages. It makes up the front end, but the backend is a set of interconnected, can be a set of interconnected computers talking to each other. So one part of that is a server, and one part of that is the database. Okay, so let me explain database in simple terms. Like some of you guys are not understanding what a database is. At the very basic level, a database is just a text file, let's say, and it has all the, let's say this app is just logging in people, right? There is a text file, users.txt. In each line it has listed, okay, Shreyas password this, Sarthak password this, Aditya password this. There is a text file, all this data is written. So when you're logging in, the server just opens the text file and checks, okay, does Shreyas have this password? That's it. That's all the database is. It's just a storage of data. It is just a file in your hard disk. That is what a database is. Okay. So, but a database like takes that file and converts that, creates a whole server you can talk to. Please explain classification of front-end, back-end by drawing diagram. Did this diagram not make sense completely? Like, what's wrong with this diagram, Nikhil? And there was one more diagram, right? Wait, yeah, this one. So your browser is giving you the front end. If you see in the bottom photo, hello world, that is the front end. And this web server that you see on the right, that web server is the back end. What comes under front end and back end? Okay, I don't think I'm understanding you right now. We'll take that at the end. I'll let you unmute at the end, okay? We'll move forward for now. सर्वर के पास रिक्वेस्ट जाती है और डेटाबेस से कनेक्ट करता है सर्वर रिस्पॉन्ड करता है एग्जैक्टली यस there can be cases where it doesn't need to talk to the database at all. It can just have some logic in itself and it can reply. If there is if the request has something to do with data, it will connect to the database, talk to it, and then respond to the front end. Okay. So as we talked about in the front end, there are three main languages: HTML, CSS, JS. Yeah. So in server side, there is no such specification. You can use any language you want. And these are the most popular ones. Python and JavaScript are the two most popular languages used in server, used in a server. And in our module, in our workshops, we will teach you JavaScript. We will teach you how to write a backend in JavaScript. But there are many more languages. There is Golang, there is Java, PHP, I think many people you might know. So honestly, in any language, even in C, C++, you can write a server. Okay. Java is different from JavaScript. Yes, it is very different. So, and these are the languages, right? And so databases, there are many choices of databases. There is MySQL, the elephant you see, that is PostgreSQL. Then there is MongoDB, there is Cassandra. There is a lot more, plenty of options, but that's not something you need to get into right now. I don't think we are covering databases in our syllabus. Difference between programming languages and markup languages, I'll come to it at the end. बार बार मत पूछो. Right? And okay, now this is a more in-depth diagram of what we're talking about. Go वाली कौन सी language है? Golang ही नाम है उसका. Okay, so this is a more in-depth diagram. Server side, client side, as you can see. So in your browser, let's go by numbers, okay? First, number one, what happens is when you send a request, you say shreyasgupta.in. You tell your browser, I need to go to shreyasgupta.in. So there is a HTTP GET request that goes to the server. Basically, the server behind shreyasgupta.in. That request goes to there. Okay. Then, so this server is a bit too in depth that you don't exactly need to worry about second step. Basically, it goes to the server, right? And all the data related to your request also goes to the server. So for example, in one of the examples I said, you are logging in, you are sending the username and password to the server. So all that will also go as part of the request. So everything goes to the web server, right? Then comes to the third part. If you check the third circle, that is data. So there is a database. Anything from related to your request, the server might need to fetch data from the database or need to update data. Let's say you went to Facebook and you created an account, right? When you create an account, it has to store your new information. So the web server will tell the database, okay, this is a new user, Shreyas Gupta, this email, this password, please store it. So it will tell the database and the database will store it, right? So now what happens is all that logic is done. Now your web server will return the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That is uh, basically all that you need in the front end. Now all that will be delivered by the server to your browser, and then your browser will show it, right? That is the sixth step. Seventh step you can ignore for now. But yeah, did this diagram make sense? Which point may be confusing to you guys? First, a request is sent, then data, then the server contacts the database, talks to it, then it returns back all the data to the browser, the HTML, CSS to the browser. URL encoding and post data. Right. So I said, right. So when you are, there is a lot of data that is sent along with the request. When your browser is sending a request to shreyasgupta.in, it needs to send a lot of data. Okay, from, let's say, for my website, there is not much data is being sent, but on facebook.com, when you say that I want to log in with this username and this password, that data is also sent, right? So that data can come under get post data, right? Similarly, URL encoding, example, if you see, never mind. Example, if you type google.com/gmail, if you see something like this is an example URL. Wait, yeah, I'm showing URL encoding only. So right, so this is an example URL, right? Let's say google.com/gmail, and then you have probably seen that there is a question mark, hello is equal to something there is. So all this is the URL encoding. These are basically variables that are encoded into the URL, and then when this URL goes to the server decodes this to find the data. So these basically variables actually mean something to the data, right? Yeah. These variables mean something to the server. So there is many types of data that may be delivered. There is get post, there is URL encoding, there is cookies. So cookies is also some kind of storage that your browser has that is also sent with every request. Okay. Web server, web application, don't worry about that. As I said, right now think of them as the same thing, right? Uh, why it comes sometimes to accept cookies? That is by law. Basically, in the Europe, they've asked that cookies is basically like encrypted storage kind of. So if you see, if you go on your web browser right now, you tap this lock icon that you see, there will be cookies, right? Click on that, and you can under URL you can see these variables. Okay, these variables are, this is just a storage. Okay, there is a when p underscore jar stands for this variable stands for this. Okay, this is all data that Google has stored on my browser. Okay, these are stored in an encrypted way so that no one can these can be stored in an encrypted way so no one can actually access these, uh, right? And so whenever I'm sending a request to Google, these variables are also going with it, right? Why is there a need of cookies? For example, right now I'm logged in, right? I'm logged in to uh, I'm logged in on Google, right? How does Google know every time I send a request, I'm logged in? Because the first time I logged in, Google set a cookie. There is probably a cookie somewhere here that says I'm logged in, and it stores my user ID and my like an encrypted token here. And every time the request goes to Google, it can see that variable and it can check, okay, yes, Shreyas is logged in, and it can work appropriately. So when basically you are when you log into a site, then you close that site, you open it again, you are still logged in. That is through some kind of storage on your browser, and it is usually through these cookies. Okay. Cookies also store password. Cookies don't exactly store password because that will be very, very, very insecure. Cookies store an encrypted token, but that's not something you need to worry about right now. Right. Will not accepting cookies. Third party website want access to cookies. 5, 6, 7 step. So basically, okay, the cookies I think we've covered a bit. If there are any more doubts, we'll take that at the end. I'll just take this 5, 6, 7 steps. Okay. So now, as I told you, right, your browser shows you the front end, and the front end consists of three parts: the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Where does that HTML, CSS, and JavaScript come from? That is sent by the server to the browser to display to you, right? So when I basically mean, okay, the server is sending me data, the server is sending you HTML, CSS. Okay, it can send you different stuff as well, and then in the middle, someone else can send you the HTML, CSS. But basically, it is sends you the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that your browser is showing you, right? So when I have done everything with my database, I have done everything, I have finalized what I want to show to the user. I will write that in the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I will send that to your browser, and your browser will show it to you. 4 and 5 step is same. Yes, I don't know why they are written differently. They are the same thing. Okay, you can ignore the 7th step for now. But yeah, any more doubt in this diagram, in this flowchart? And that's the end of it. That is, we're done with introduction to web. We're done with introduction to web development. We'll start with coding after a bit. 7, I told you can ignore 7. That is just, let's ignore 7 for now. Yeah, 3, please. Okay, so, okay, I'll just give the overview. I'll include 3 in that. So firstly, what happens is your browser, you type in your browser, I want to go to this site. I want to go to google.com, right? So your browser sends a GET request. That is the first point. Your browser sends a GET request to the server that the server that is sitting behind google.com, right? The google.com redirects to an IP address. That IP address is basically the identity of a computer, right? Your browser sends the request to that computer. This is the first point, right? And second point can also be included to this. Basically, you are sending all the data, right? As I said, the cookies, the URL encoding, you are sending everything, all that to the server. Now the server now may need to contact the database. The database stores all the data. That this can be, for example, if you're logging in, then this can be all the login data. Or if you're on some social media website, this can be all the posts, all the images, all that is stored in the database. So when your web server needs to do something with that data, it will contact that database to maybe read some data or update some new data that may be there. Then that is the third point. And after all that is done, your web server now knows, okay, now I need to send back all this to that person, to you, the user. It will convert everything into HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It will send that to your browser. That is the fifth point. And then browser will show that to you. That is the front end, right? So only the sixth point that you see, that is the front end, okay, that is being shown to you. All the rest of the points all are happening in the backend. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 also. All that is the backend. Only the sixth part is the front end. Right. So I think we're done with this then. We'll take doubts at the end. I mean, we're at the end as well. I mean, after this is going to be a one more session that will be taken by, I think, Aditya. After that, we'll take all the doubts that you have. So let's talk about the upcoming stuff, right? We're done with introduction to web. We're done with introduction to web development. Let's talk about what we're going to do in these workshops, right? This is your syllabus. Today, right now, till now, we have covered the module 1. After this, there's going to be a module 1.1. We're going to show you a live demo. We'll cover HTML, we'll cover CSS, we'll cover JavaScript, all 3 languages that make up the front end. Then we'll talk about a bit about hosting. We'll uh, we'll explain that later what that means. Then we'll get into backend. We'll explain what APIs are, and we'll make a small backend website as well. We'll do that through Node.js, I assume. Yeah, we're doing that. So we'll do that in JavaScript. Is JavaScript same as Java? It is not. Those are 2 very different languages, right? And this is the timeline, okay? Today is 17 Jan. Yeah, today we're gonna have a quiz at the end. It's gonna be a very chill quiz. I don't think it even has points. Chill रहना कोई चिंता नहीं है. From tomorrow, we'll start with the actual coding. Resources, we'll let you know later. Okay, don't worry about that. There are plenty of resources on development. So yeah, from tomorrow, we'll start with the actual coding. You'll get a task tomorrow as well. And yeah, there are going to be many interesting tasks that you will enjoy, hopefully. Yeah, that is the timeline. That's it for module 1. WebD spam kar do, please. Yeah, now like क्यों डॉम बोल दिया यार उसको तूने?
WebD voice.
सॉरी सर।
WebD.
हम अभी समझाएंगे थोड़ा बाद में।
नहीं मतलब आज के सेशन में
नहीं आज नहीं, मतलब बाद में, मतलब
हाँ,
आगे
कल
के सेशन
ठीक है।
में।
नहीं,
Cool. ले जय श्रेयस सर भी दिख गया बीच में.
सर
So we're done with module 1. Now a member will take over. We'll do module 1.1. That is a live demo. And after that, I'll stay here. We'll take up any doubts you have after that. Okay.
Is my screen visible?
हाँ.
So, hey everyone, we'll be doing a live demo of everything you have learned today. So, for example, the first thing you have learned is front end and back end. So, in front end, there are 3 languages: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So, here is a basic calculator app. Okay, like it works pretty normally, right? So, just a second, I'll be opening the chats for doubts. Yeah, so it's a pretty basic calculator app. It's hosted online. So here you can see the code of the calculator app that goes into making it. Here's some HTML, some CSS and JS. Don't worry about the code. We'll be showing a lot more of this later. So right now, the calculator is working on all the 3 languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Currently, it's only front end. Okay, there's no backend part here. It's currently a basic front end app. Okay, so it has all the functionalities. It has some good styling also. So let's say, for example, that I remove the JavaScript in this app. So here's the JavaScript. I have removed it. It takes some time to load. Yeah, right. So this is the new app. As you can see, it has all the styling. Nothing has changed on the overview of it. So now, for example, if I press any buttons, 1, 2, 3, any of this, they won't work because the JavaScripts hold the functionality of this app. Like this calculator only works properly if there is JavaScript in it. Like no icons will work. It's just a display model, you can say. Right. So now that I have pasted the JavaScript back, it will take some time to load. Yeah.
Refresh कर ले.
Right. So it's now back to normal. It works normally. So now just remove the CSS of this. Right. Yeah. So this is now the app. Currently, it has no looks. There are only simple buttons here. The whole view of this app, the whole UI, as you were saying a lot in the chat, the whole UI of this app is holded by the CSS, right? So the styling of this app works only through CSS only. So, but it has all the functionalities, right? If I write 1, 2, 12 plus 3. It gives the answer. It has functionality because we haven't removed the JavaScript, but it doesn't have the styling. So since we have removed the CSS, right? So I guess this gives you an idea of what CSS and JavaScript does. I'll be reloading it. Now let's remove the HTML. Okay. Right. Nothing. The HTML is the basic skeleton of an app. Like the app won't even exist if there isn't any HTML. So HTML is like the building block of it. It gives like a structure, a bone structure to it. What is UI? We'll not be telling more of that. It will be covered in design. Yeah, you have to learn all three of these languages, as you can see, to make a workable app. So this is how HTML, CSS, and JavaScript collaborate in an app and work. So like we are back to normal. It's a good running app, right? So let's move to a little more complex app. Your APK leaderboard, like right. This is the leaderboard. So here it's all front end, but there is some back end to it. Okay. So if I just reload this app once again, right? So here, as you can see, all this data is dynamic. Dynamic in the sense like when your issues were solved, like when your PR were merged, then your points were updated in this, right? Now it wasn't like that we were sitting on computers and manually doing the points here. Like we were changing to this points to plus 10, 40, right? Like this. No, it was all done by the backend and some bot coding also that is unnecessary. So the thing to say is that this data is dynamic, just like Facebook or any other app. This calculator app here was a static website. Static in the sense, right? Like every time I reload it, the data will be same. The HTML will be same, the CSS will be same, the JavaScript will be same. All the data it has will be same. Like there won't be a new number here like alpha or delta something. So right. So the calculator app is static and the leaderboard is pretty dynamic, right? So how does a app becomes dynamic? Well, in a sense, it does become dynamic by adding backend to it because backend has, like Sir said, it has a server and some database. And database holds data, which data that data is updated or changed by the server, right? So the server has access to the database, and that data is then changed, which is then served by the server to the front end, right? So this is all quite advanced for you guys, but if you can understand only a bit of it, it would be great. So I have opened the developer tools in Chrome. I guess you all must know the developer tools. You can right click to inspect, or there's command option inspect or command of control option. I don't know in Windows. So now we'll be seeing every request that goes when we reload this app. Like when first you load this app, your browser will send a request to the server, right? Like my Google Chrome browser will send a request to the server because I have written the URL. It knows where to put that request. So when I put the URL, it goes to the server. The server makes a request, and then the server where this website is hosted that returns files, HTML, CSS, JavaScript files. These files are then taken by my browser, and this website is loaded, as you can see. Uh, is the meet locked? Because some of you are.
एक बार नाइट टाइम में करके शिफ्ट रिफ्रेश करना, क्योंकि कैश की वजह से आधी फाइल्स पहले से लोड हो रही हैं, नेटवर्क में नहीं आ रही. मतलब हार्ड रिफ्रेश करना है एक बार।
Okay.
Re-explain.
Acha. Right. So as you can see in the network section of the developer tools, all the requests which are sent by the browser and which the browser receives are shown, are logged here. So these are all of the many requests which goes. So we will look at a very simple one like this request. Okay. This is a request to the backend, right? The front end is making a request to the backend here. This is the URL. If I just copy this URL and open it in a new tab. Now, instead of I'm bypassing the front end, I'm making this request directly from my browser. So here you can see there's the raw data, right? This is the raw data, which is then processed by the front end and shown in this way. Like we all can send you this link directly, but I don't think anyone will look here and see their points. Okay. So this is the raw data. The same data is processed by the front end here. Just a minute. So yeah, this is the data which is coming from the backend and this processed by the front end, right? So here's the request URL. This is the URL which the front end gets a request. And now there are like 200 requests in the status code, and it is a GET request. Like we are requesting, getting data from the backend, right? So it is a GET request. There are two types of requests: GET, like more than two types: GET, POST, and many other, patch, delete. We'll be talking about that later. And now, if I look at the payload, right? So the payload is page one, because as you can see, the loading here is in a different way. Like if I scroll down, then only more data is requested. We don't have to go into the detail of that. And this is the response, right? So as I have showed you in the browser only, this is the raw data. I have a formatter here. So, okay. So I guess any doubts you guys have? You must have understood a bit about
किसी
backend
को
and how.
समझ आया क्या बोला ये?
हाँ भाई देखो.
No.
अरे
Yes. Bit confusing. It is a bit confusing. I know. अभी क्लियर नहीं होगा. थोड़ा थोड़ा आया है.
थोड़ा मैं एक बार ना हिंदी में भी बता देता हूँ तुम लोगों को, जैसे कुछ देख लो.
5%. कोई अगर स्पेसिफिक डाउट किसी को है तो पूछ लो.
सर अगर इन लोगों को हिंदी में ज़्यादा अच्छे से समझ आता तो फिर
अरे
हिंदी में
यार,
पढ़ा.
नहीं वो
some students only speak in English here.
देर आर
अच्छा.
नॉन हिंदी स्पीकिंग पीपल एज वेल. बट एक बार हिंदी में थोड़ा बता दे. एक बार मैं थोड़ा इनको ये बता देता हूँ. ओके सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल द विंडो ऑन द राइट दैट यू सी दैट इज क्रोम डेवलपर टूल्स ऑन एनी वेबसाइट. यू ओपन योर ब्राउजर, कोई भी वेबसाइट खुलिए, राइट क्लिक एंड क्लिक ऑन इंस्पेक्ट. दैट इज द डेवलपर टूल्स दैट विल ओपन अप. That is the window that is opened up on the right. Okay, and in that those developer tools are basically used to basically see the source of the website or see the terminal, things like that. There are a lot of tools that are useful stuff here that you will use in your future. So this is one of the tabs. Okay, this is not the backend, by the way, Harsha. One of the tabs is the network tabs, which And that tab basically tracks all the requests that are happening through the browser to the server. Okay. And all those requests are being displayed here. So that is what we are showing you right now. All the requests that are being sent by the browser to the server, that is at geekhaven.github.io/apkmonthlyleaderboard. All these requests are there logged, and that is what we are explaining right now. Yeah. Who is allowed to edit? What do you mean?
हाँ,
allowed
यूआरएल
to
भी मतलब
edit
कहीं ना
website.
कहीं होस्ट होता है ना, तो उसी होस्टेड यूआरएल की बात हो रही है। जैसे तुम लोग भी कोई वेबसाइट बनाओगे तो कहीं होस्ट करोगे ना, अभी वो भी होस्टिंग भी समझाएंगे मतलब।
We'll explain hosting to you. Who is allowed to edit website?
अरे
Uh, See,
वो
one
फर्स्ट
thing
वालों
is,
ने गिटहब पेजेस तो बता ही दिया ना, तो वो भी एक होस्टिंग ही है।
गिटहब पेजेस
हाँ,
बताया मैंने।
हाँ हाँ।
सी हु इज अलाउड टू एडिट वेबसाइट, तूने अभी आई थिंक इंस्पेक्ट किया होगा और तूने देखा कि वो HTML एडिट कर सकता है, राइट? वो तू जब एडिट करता है, इट्स एडिटेड इन द फ्रंट एंड, इट्स एडिटेड ओनली ऑन योर ब्राउजर। लेकिन कोई दूसरा बंदा साइट खोलेगा तो सर्वर उसको कोई सेम पुरानी वाली फाइल ही देगा, तुम्हारी एडिटेड HTML नहीं देता है। वो सर्वर को पता भी नहीं है कि तुमने एडिट किया है। ठीक है? तो दी इट इज़ नॉट एडिटेड, इट इज़ एडिटेड फॉर यू ओनली, किसी और के लिए एडिट नहीं होती है।
ये बर्ब स्वीट वगैरह अभी मत करो डिस्कस।
Can we copy the source code and create our own website? Yes. Why not? But you can only copy the front end code. Back end code you don't know. When you open, click it, inspect, that is only the front end code that you see. जनरल डाउट था एक, बग्स क्या होता है, ये बाद में डिस्कस करते हैं भाई।
ठीक है फिर, और तो कोई डाउट नहीं है। आईपी एड्रेस पे जाना तुम।
कैन
तो
वी
एक बार ना मैं
एडिट बैक
हिंदी
एंड
में फिर
कोड?
से समझा देता हूँ।
नो यू कैन नॉट। कैन यू, अतुल, मेरे कंप्यूटर पे कोई डॉक्यूमेंट तू एडिट कर सकता है क्या तेरे कंप्यूटर पे बैठ के? अगर मैं तेरे को एक्सेस नहीं दिया तो तू नहीं कर सकता ना। दैट इज व्हाट बैक एंड कोड इज, दैट इज जस्ट समथिंग। हाँ, टीम व्यूअर, बट तुम्हारे पास google.com के कंप्यूटर का टीम व्यूअर एक्सेस नहीं है ना प्रत्यक्ष, तो कैसे एडिट करोगे?
अरे देखो, जैसे यहाँ पे मैं अगर एलिमेंट्स टैब पे जाता हूँ तो मुझे इस पूरी वेबसाइट का कोड मिल जाता है। ठीक है, मतलब सॉर्ट ऑफ जैसे फ्रंट एंड पार्ट होता है। तो जैसे यहाँ पे मैं ये हेडिंग चेंज करना चाहता हूँ। ठीक है, मैं लीडर बोर्ड की जगह कुछ और लिख देता हूँ। मैं जय वेब डी लिख दे रहा हूँ। तो देखो यहाँ पे तो चेंज हो गया। ठीक है, अब ये जो तुम्हारी फाइल आई है ना, ये तुम्हारी लोकली अभी स्टोर्ड है। अब जैसे ही मैं इसे रीलोड करूंगा तो ये दोबारा वापस से सर्वर से फाइल फाइल आएगी। तो सर्वर पे तो चेंज नहीं होगा ना, क्योंकि सर्वर पे तो मतलब जो कोड होगा वो तो वहीं वहीं पे रहेगा ना। तुम यहाँ पे चेंजेस करके सर्वर में अगर रिफ्लेक्ट होने लगा तो भाई चल गया फिर, मतलब फिर तो कोई वेबसाइट ऐसे वर्क ही नहीं करेगी ना। इफ वी वांट टू चेंज इट फॉर एवरीवन, नो यू कांट, अनलेस तुमने ही वो वेबसाइट डेवलप की और तुम उसके कोड में जाके चेंज कर रहे हो।
सी एक कंप्यूटर पे है वो बैकएंड का कोड, और ये वाला कोड भी, क्योंकि ये डिलीवर हो रहा है। अब वो तुम कह रहे हो कि किसके पास एक्सेस है, एक बंदे के पास है, ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल के पास है, वो कंप्यूटर में कोड पड़ा है। तुम्हारे ऊपर है कि तुम्हारे कंप्यूटर का एक्सेस तुमने सिर्फ खुद को दे रखा है, या इंटरनेट के थ्रू तुमने मल्टीपल लोगों को दे रखा है एक्सेस। ठीक है? शुड सर्वर बी ऑन ऑल द टाइम? यस, सर्वर शुड बी ऑन ऑल द टाइम, वरना कि तुम यू आर ओपनिंग google.com और खुल नहीं रहा है, तो ऐसा थोड़ी होता है भाई, 24 घंटे चलाना पड़ेगा।
हैकिंग, अरे यार हैकिंग का भी क्या है बता दो, उसके लिए तो मैं
हैकिंग हैकिंग कहाँ से आ गई यार? क्विज विल टेक भाई, डोंट वरी, ले लेंगे क्विज।
हाँ हाँ, ले लेंगे भाई।
वीपीएन पे, वीपीएन पे
सर
आना है क्या?
बैकएंड
पहले
एक्सेस नहीं कर
पहले
सकते।
टॉपिक रिलेटेड पूछ लो यार, वीपीएन भी बता देंगे।
बैकएंड नहीं, तुम बैकएंड ऐसे डायरेक्टली उसका कोड एक्सेस नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन तुम बैकएंड पे रिक्वेस्ट डाल सकते हो। ठीक है, जैसे इसी कोड में अगर तुम देखो तो बैकएंड को रिक्वेस्ट जा रही है, तुम जैसे नेटवर्क्स में देखोगे तो इसमें से एक रिक्वेस्ट ये वाली, ये बैकएंड को ही जा रही है, और फिर इसके ही रिस्पॉन्स में जो डेटा आया है वही यहाँ पे हम शो कर रहे हैं। ठीक है, तो लेकिन तुम बैकएंड का कोड नहीं देख सकते कि वो बैकएंड में भी कहाँ से जा रहा है डेटा। और डेटाबेस माइस्क्यूएल, तो माइस्क्यूएल यूज कर सकते हो, कुछ भी कर सकते हो इसमें, डेटाबेस तो कैसे भी सकते हो। ठीक है, और कोई डाउट्स? ये समझ में आ गया ना, मतलब बैक एंड और फ्रंट एंड कैसे काम कर रहा है, कैसे उसमें, मतलब इट्स लाइक अ बार्टर सिस्टम। ठीक है, तुम फ्रंट एंड बैक एंड को रिक्वेस्ट देगा, बैक एंड फिर अपना प्रोसेस करके डेटा डेटाबेस को जैसे उससे डेटा लेगा और फिर दोबारा फ्रंट एंड को डेटा भेजेगा। ठीक है, जैसे ये HTML की फाइल है ना, ये भी दिखाया था तुमने। ये पूरी HTML की फाइल ही जो होती है वो एज अ रिक्वेस्ट आती है हम पे, तभी ये शो करती है हम पे। हाँ,
या कोई भी मीन्स नहीं है बैकएंड एक्सेस कर सके? अगर देखो, मेरे कंप्यूटर को एक्सेस करने के बाद, एक्सेस करने का तुम्हारे पास कोई मीन्स है? अगर मैंने अलाउ कर रखा है कि भाई तुम ऐसे करके कर सकते हो, कि मैंने, देर इज डिफरेंट प्रोटोकॉल, जैसे SSH के थ्रू होता है, और भी कई तरीके होते हैं, हम तुमको आइडिया नहीं है, बट वही बात है कि इट जस्ट थिंक ऑफ इट एज अ कंप्यूटर। बैकएंड एक कंप्यूटर पे है, वो कंप्यूटर बैठा है वहाँ पे, वो रिक्वेस्ट ले रहा है और आंसर दे रहा है। हाउ टू
हाँ,
सर्च
तो
HTML CSS JS? कोई भी साइट खुली है उस पे, तुम इंस्पेक्ट करोगे तो जो एलिमेंट्स में जो तुमको कोड दिख रहा है वो सारा HTML है, और उसी में अब तुमको समझ नहीं आएगा CSS JS कहाँ से देखें, वो बाद में समझ आ जाएगा। बट उसी HTML कोड में CSS और JS भी लिंक्ड होता है, उस पर क्लिक करोगे CSS JS भी दिख जाएगा।
मतलब HTML CSS जैसे तुम्हारे ही ब्राउजर में होगा ना, वो डेटा तुम्हारे कंप्यूटर में तुम चाहो तो देख सकते हो, लेकिन जो बैकएंड का डेटा है वो तुम्हें नहीं भेजा जाएगा। ठीक है, तो जैसे ये एक रिक्वेस्ट है, इसमें ये जो रिक्वेस्ट है ब्राउजर ने डाली है। ठीक है, ये इसी URL को डाली है, ये वाली जो URL है इसी URL को डाली है। और ये भी एक गेट रिक्वेस्ट है। गेट रिक्वेस्ट मैंने बताया ना कि डेटा हम ले रहे हैं, तो इसी के रिस्पॉन्स में ये देखो पूरी HTML है। इस HTML को अगर तुम रन करोगे तो मतलब अगर CSS JS के साथ रन करोगे तो ये तुम बना सकते हो लोग।
अंशुल सर, जो सी, जब तूने गूगल खोला है, तूने google.com तूने खोला, तो गूगल के सर्वर ने तेरे को रिप्लाई किया उसके HTML से जावास्क्रिप्ट के साथ, ठीक है? फिर तूने कुछ सर्च किया, तूने मेरा नाम सपोर्ट सर्च किया गूगल पे, तो गूगल ने तेरे को, फिर गूगल के सर्वर ने तेरे को ये सारे रिजल्ट्स भेजे, ठीक है? और अब वो तू देख रहा है। अब तूने साइट पे क्लिक किया, ठीक है, तूने श्रेयसगुप्ता.in पे क्लिक किया, तो गूगल का काम अब खत्म हो चुका है। गूगल ने तेरे ब्राउजर को बोला है कि ये यूजर अब श्रेयसगुप्ता.in पे जाना चाहता है, तो अब तेरा ब्राउजर श्रेयसगुप्ता.in को रिक्वेस्ट करेगा।
ये देखो
तो वो जो सर्वर है, श्रेयसगुप्ता.in जो हैंडल कर रहा है जो सर्वर, अब वो वाला सर्वर रिजल्ट भेज रहा है, ठीक है?
अगर तुम चाहो तुम यहाँ गूगल का भी ऐसे ना देख सकते हो कि वो कहाँ कहाँ पे रिक्वेस्ट कौन सी जा रही है। ये देख लो, ये सब रिक्वेस्ट जा रही है गूगल में भी। और जैसे
हेडर्स पे,
मैंने ये
हेडर्स पे वो उस पे जाना
हम्म,
कि वो दिख जाए। देखो अभी google.com पे रिक्वेस्ट है, अभी रिफ्रेश कर, सर्च पे जा। तो जब तुमने सर्च किया, ये रिक्वेस्ट google.com पे गई है, ठीक है? गूगल के सर्वर ने वो सर्च पे रिप्लाई किया। अब तू श्रेयसगुप्ता.in पे क्लिक करेगा, जो रिजल्ट है, तो अब श्रेयसगुप्ता.in पे जा। हाँ, अब गूगल ने तेरे ब्राउज़र को बोला कि ये बंदा यहाँ पे जाना चाहता है, तो अब तेरे ब्राउज़र ने श्रेयसगुप्ता.in को रिक्वेस्ट भेजी कि वहाँ से HTML CSS मांग लिया। अब मेरी साइट आ चुकी है, ठीक है?
हम्म। और इसी के जैसे रिक्वेस्ट के रिस्पॉन्स में ये पूरी वेबसाइट डालेगी। ठीक है?
Would you please repeat this specific डाउट बोलो यार, क्या पार्ट समझ नहीं आया पूरा, तो क्या कैसे रिपीट करें?
मेरा टाइम फाउंडेशन भी है। तो एक बार मैं चलो फिर से बता देता हूँ रिक्वेस्ट वगैरह कैसे चलती हैं। तुम्हारे ब्राउज़र जो होता है उसमें इनिशियली कुछ नहीं होता, ठीक है। तुम जैसे ही एक यूआरएल टाइप करते हो अपने उसमें सर्च उसमें ब्राउज़र में, तो जैसे ये यूआरएल डाली मैंने, ठीक है। तो इस यूआरएल को जो तुम्हारा ब्राउज़र है वो एक रिक्वेस्ट भेजता है, ठीक है। ये जो रिक्वेस्ट होती है, ये रिक्वेस्ट के बदले जो सर्वर पे जो वेबसाइट होस्टेड होती है वो तुम्हें फाइल भेजता है। फाइल कौन सी? HTML CSS जावास्क्रिप्ट। उस फाइल को लोड करता है तुम्हारा ब्राउजर, क्योंकि लोकली तुम्हारे पास आ चुका है वो डेटा। और फिर उस डेटा से तुम्हारी जो वेबसाइट होती है वो लोड होती है, ठीक है। तो जैसे मैंने यहाँ पे रिलोड किया, तो ये सबसे पहले गया सर्वर पे, सर्वर से फाइल्स आई और यहाँ पे ब्राउजर पे लोड हो गई। ठीक, सिंपली समझ में आ गया होगा। अब जो तुम्हारी वेबसाइट होती है उसमें जो फ्रंट एंड, ये तो फ्रंट एंड का पार्ट हुआ। अब ये फ्रंट एंड जो होता है वो बैक एंड को रिक्वेस्ट मारता है। क्यों मारता है? क्योंकि जो डेटा हमें डायनामिकली चाहिए होता है, जैसे
वो
ये सारा
डायनामिक
डेटा है।
डायनामिक छोड़ दे, वो अभी थोड़ा समझ नहीं आएगा कि तू कह रहा है फ्रंट एंड फिर से रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा है, वो छोड़ दे। इतना तक ठीक है ना? ये पार्ट सबको समझ आया कि तुमने रिक्वेस्ट किया, बैकएंड ने तुमको फाइल्स भेजी, और तुम्हारे ब्राउजर ने तुमको फाइल्स दिखा दी। बस ये थोड़ा मेन पार्ट है, ठीक है। और ये अमन पूछ रहा था रिक्वेस्ट किसके लिए है। तुम जब कोई साइट खोल रहे हो, तुम बेसिकली सर्वर को रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे हो कि मेरे को तुम्हारा HTML CSS दो। उसको हम एक रिक्वेस्ट बोलते हैं। तुमने सर्वर को रिक्वेस्ट किया, तुम्हारे ब्राउजर ने सर्वर को रिक्वेस्ट किया, दैट इज कॉल्ड अ रिक्वेस्ट। ठीक है। अब रिक्वेस्ट बहुत सारे आगे, बहुत सारे काम है कि तुम्हें मेरे को ये इमेज लोड करनी है, या मेरे को, मैंने कोई बटन दबाया, तुमने लाइक दबाया, तो तुम एक रिक्वेस्ट भेज रहे हो सर्वर को कि ये लाइक अपडेट कर दो, मैंने लाइक किया है। तो basically anything you are talking to the server, that is called a request, because you are asking the server to do something.
मतलब एक तरीके से कह सकते हो कि तुम्हारा जो ब्राउजर है, तुम्हारा जितना भी वेब है पूरा, ये एक रिक्वेस्ट और रिस्पॉन्स के कम्युनिकेट होता है, ठीक है। एक चीज दूसरे को रिक्वेस्ट करती है तो उसके बेसिस पे एक रिस्पॉन्स आता है।
फ्रंट एंड की फाइल्स भी बैक एंड के थ्रू ही मिलती हैं, यस। बैक एंड पे ही स्टोर होगी, बैक एंड पे मेरे कंप्यूटर पे वो स्टोर होंगी, और जब तुम रिक्वेस्ट करोगे तो मैं तुम्हारे ब्राउजर को ये तीनों फाइल भेजूंगा। ह्यूज ट्रैफिक की वजह से क्रैश हो जाता है, यस। कि जैसे मेरा कंप्यूटर ज़्यादा पावरफुल नहीं है, और लेट्स से ढेर सारे
रिक्वेस्ट।
मिलियंस ऑफ लोग एक साथ लोग रिक्वेस्ट भेज रहे हैं, तो मेरा कंप्यूटर हैंडल ही नहीं कर पाया इतने सारे, तो क्रैश कर गई साइट। दैट इज व्हाट अ साइट क्रैश इज।
अब तो समझ में आ गया होगा वैसे। हाँ, सर का
यस, माय
कंप्यूटर इन
कंप्यूटर इज
द
द सर्वर इन दिस केस। बताओ क्या डाउट बचा है? गूगल का पीसी बहुत अच्छा होगा, यही तो ट्विस्ट है। गूगल का सिर्फ एक पीसी नहीं है, गूगल के ढेर सारे हंड्रेड्स ऑफ पीसीज हैं। और वो ऐसे भी, वैसे तुमको ज़्यादा समझाना ठीक बात नहीं है, बट ठीक है। उनके ढेर सारे सर्वर्स हैं, गूगल का सिर्फ एक सर्वर नहीं है। और इन सर्वर्स के बीच में ट्रैफिक मैनेज होता रहता है। तुमने रिक्वेस्ट भेजी और मैंने भेजी, तो ज़रूरी नहीं है कि वो सेम पीसी पे जा रहा है, ठीक है। क्योंकि गूगल का ऐसा सिस्टम है, बड़ी साइट्स का ऐसा सिस्टम है कि दे हैव मल्टीपल सर्वर्स जो कॉन्करेंटली हैंडल कर रहे हैं, ठीक है। इसको थोड़ा डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड कंप्यूटिंग ये सब बोलते हैं, बट वो आगे की चीज़ है। अभी तुम एक ही सर्वर पे काम करो।
If we copy the paste the code of website and do certain things, then we produce the code of the website. So can we give the website same URL? URL तो यूनिक होगा ना एक वेबसाइट के लिए। तुम मतलब बना तो सकते हो, लेकिन तुम पे बैकएंड का कोड नहीं होगा ना। तो मतलब एक मॉकअप ही बना पाओगे।
निखिल, डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड तो एग्जैक्टली नहीं बोलेंगे, डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड बोलेंगे। डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड फिर वो थोड़ा डिफरेंट हो जाता है।
और ये जो बैकएंड होता है ये ऐप डेवलपमेंट हर जगह काम आता है।
तुम्हारे फ़ोन में कोई भी ऐप है ना, वो दैट ऐप इज़ बेसिकली फ्रंट एंड, ठीक है। तुम्हारे ब्राउज़र पे एक है, ये है वेब फ्रंट एंड। वैसे ही तुम्हारे फ़ोन में कोई ऐप है, वो ऐप फ्रंट एंड है। बट वो ऐप पीछे किसी सर्वर के थ्रू किसी कंप्यूटर से ही बात कर रही है डेटा लाने के लिए। तुम ऐप को रिक्वेस्ट करते हो कोई, ठीक है, तुम्हारा ऐप का यूजली इंस्टॉल्ड है, तो यूज ऐसा नहीं है कि बार बार फाइल्स भेज रहे हैं, बट तुम्हारी ऐप डेटा रिक्वेस्ट कर रही है। तुम फेसबुक खोलते हो तो तुम्हारी जो फेसबुक की ऐप है वो उसके फेसबुक के कंप्यूटर से मांगती है कि भाई मेरे को नई पोस्ट, फेसबुक का कंप्यूटर तुमको नई पोस्ट देगा। Website, if we can copy paste front end, sure, but back end you cannot copy paste ना।
यार GitHub जो है ना वो एक होस्टिंग प्लेटफॉर्म, मतलब वहाँ पे कोड होस्टेड होता है, लेकिन जो वेब डेवलपमेंट है वो एक अलग ही चीज़ है यार।
GitHub कोड होस्ट करने की जगह है। तूने वेब का कोड लिखा है, तूने ऐप का कोड लिखा है, सीपी का कोड लिखा है, कोई भी कोड लिखा है, वो तू जाके GitHub पे होस्ट कर सकते हैं कि भाई देखो मैंने ये बनाया। GitHub का कुछ ऐसा डायरेक्ट कनेक्शन नहीं।
हाँ, रिकॉर्ड हो सेशन मिल जाए।
HTML CSS जावास्क्रिप्ट के लिए तो नहीं, बट आगे करना पड़ेगा, वो सब आगे की वर्कशॉप्स में सब सिखा दिया जाएगा।
या तुम जैसे अगर तुम्हें जैसे वेब डेवलपमेंट, अगर तुम मुझे कोई ये भी पूछना था ना कि वेब डेवलपमेंट पूरी ऑनलाइन होती है, तो ऐसा नहीं होता है। तुम्हारा ये जो ब्राउजर है ना, ये तो इटसेल्फ इट्स केपेबल कि वो HTML CSS जावास्क्रिप्ट रेंडर कर ले, ठीक है। तो अगर तुम्हारे पास लोकली फाइल्स होती हैं तो उन्हें खोल के भी तुम डायरेक्टली अपने ब्राउजर में चला सकते हो। उसके लिए ज़रूरी नहीं तुम पे एक इंटरनेट कनेक्शन हो।
कुछ ऐसे लोकल होस्ट का भी रहता है तो वो बता देंगे तुम्हें।
हम्म।
हम मत कोड, कोड या एवरीवन कैन इंस्टॉल VS Code।
हाँ, VS कोड यूज़ कर लो, सब लोग यही करते
तुम लोग C++ के लिए कोड ब्लॉक्स या सबलाइम टेक्स्ट कुछ यूज करोगे कब तक है?
हैं।
तो वैसे यार
आई गेस
जाना
ये
है
वाला पार्ट रैप अप करते हैं।
इसके बाद तो फिर वही क्विज है ना सीधा।
क्विज लेना है। इन लोगों को ये समझाना है कि टास्क वगैरह कैसे करने हैं, या वो कल ही बता
वो तो कल बता देंगे जब तक।
देंगे। चलो ठीक है।
सब बेसिक बता दूँ, उसके बाद कुछ ले लेना। VPN मैं तुमको एग्जैक्ट VPN नहीं बता रहा हूँ, मैं बहुत बेसिक बता रहा हूँ। VPN क्या होता है कि VPN तुम्हारी को प्रॉक्सी करता है। मेरे को google.com को गूगल खोलना है, ठीक है, गूगल से रिक्वेस्ट करनी है, बट मेरे को गूगल को बताना नहीं है कि मैं अपने कंप्यूटर से रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ या मैं श्रेयस गुप्ता रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ, ठीक है, मेरे को दिखाना नहीं है कि भाई मेरी एड्रेस से आ रही है। तो मैंने क्या किया, मैंने बीच में एक कंप्यूटर डाल दिया, ठीक है, मैंने रिक्वेस्ट उस कंप्यूटर को भेजी, है मेरे को google.com फुल खोलना है, फिर उस कंप्यूटर मेरे लिए google.com खोलता है, बट google.com को पता नहीं है कि मैंने खोला है, ठीक है, google.com को तो उस कंप्यूटर का IP एड्रेस आ रहा है, google.com उस कंप्यूटर को भेजता है सारा डेटा, और वो कंप्यूटर इंटर्न मुझे सारा डेटा भेजता है। तो मैंने अब google.com खोल लिया है, बट गूगल को पता नहीं है कि मेरी IP से है, उसको कोई और बंदा लग रहा है। तो VPN बेसिकली यही है कि ऐसे मल्टीपल लोग, ढेर सारे लोग एक पर्टिकुलर कंप्यूटर को रिक्वेस्ट भेज रहे हैं जो VPN का कंप्यूटर है, और VPN इंटर्न फिर आगे उस वेबसाइट को भेज रहा है। तो उस वेबसाइट को तुम्हारा IP एड्रेस नहीं मिलता, उस तो वो साइट है, उसको पता नहीं है कि भाई इस IP एड्रेस से मिला। मिडिल मैन कह सकते हो।
ये जैसे डायग्राम देख लो, ये है
ये
इसमें।
ऐसे थोड़ा इंक्रिप्टेड वे में हो सकता है कि कोई किसी को कभी पता नहीं है कि उस VPN को तुमने भेजा था, ये और कम्प्लीटली डिफरेंट चीज़
तो और अलग है यार।
है। ये जो मैंने एकदम बेसिक चीज़ बताई, इसको प्रॉक्सी भी बोलते हैं, और ये एक्चुअली बैक एंड में बहुत कॉमन चीज़ है। जैसे मैंने बोला ना कि गूगल के लेट से 100 सर्वर हैं, तो तुमको तो नहीं पता भाई, तुम तो सिर्फ google.com को भेजा ना तुमने, तो वही तो गूगल ने सबके सामने एक प्रॉक्सी लगा दी कि तुम google.com को भेज रहे हो। अब वो प्रॉक्सी 100 सर्वर्स के बीच में रिक्वेस्ट भेज जा रही है, और तुमको पता नहीं चल रहा है कौन से PC ने तुमको भेजा, तुमको तो लग रहा है google.com। तो ऐसे प्रॉक्सी दोनों वे में काम करती है। आइडेंटिटी हिडन बाय यूजिंग, यूजली जो VPN वाला है उसको पता है तुम्हारी आइडेंटिटी।
एंड 100% हिडन नहीं होता यार VPN से।
मतलब गूगल को पता नहीं चलेगा श्योर, बट तुम्हारा वीपीएन वाले को पता चलेगा। और गवर्नमेंट अगर आके कहती है वीपीएन को कि भाई मुझे बताओ, वीपीएन वाले को बताना पड़ेगा।
और बैकएंड के लिए हम लोग जावास्क्रिप्ट में ही करेंगे कोडिंग, उसके लिए अलग से बताएंगे।
इसका नाम
चलो मैं एंड करता हूँ।
दैट्स इनफ विदाउट सब रिलेवेंट चीजें आ रही है आपको एक
अब क्विज करते हैं यार, थोड़ा फन टाइप्स। मुझे स्क्रीन शेयर कर दे।
हाँ एक सेकेंड।
क्विज में अपनी गिटहब आईडी से लॉगिन करना, ठीक है। गिटहब यूजर नेम डाल देना उसमें, हम लोग भी ट्रैक कर लेंगे इससे। इन द मीनवाइल कोई जैसे किसी को लग रहा हो कोई डाउट लेफ्ट ओवर है तो मार्कअप लैंग्वेज सीखेंगे। अभी हम HTML सिखाएंगे ना तो एक दिन में ही खत्म हो जाएगा। प्ले पे कर।
हाँ विजिबल है ना?
दिक्कत ये है कि
हाँ हाँ,
वो सिंटैक्स पता
अभी
हो
आंसर।
आ जाएगा। क्विज का लिंक तो दें इन लोग को।
हाँ सर, एक सेकेंड।
ये लो, लिंक डाल दिया है सर ने मैंने तो।
ज्वाइन कर लो।
अपने अपने नेम से करना ज्वाइन, ठीक है।
गिटहब आईडी से करना, मतलब गिटहब यूजर नेम।
गिटहब आईडी, यस।
ये किसी के नाम में लास्ट में सेमीकोलन है, वो गिटहब में भी ऐसा ही है क्या?
स्पेस तो नहीं होगा यार बीच में यूजर, किसी ने गलत डाल दिया तो बंद करके फिर से
लीव कर सकते हो, एक बार फिर से कर लो।
करके वापस आ जाओ, जब तक सारे नहीं होंगे तब तक स्टार्ट नहीं
गेटअप
करें।
यूजरनेम पॉइंट्स के लिए यार, तो वैसे पता नहीं पॉइंट्स होंगे या नहीं, बाद में देखेंगे। can't fill your
सर मेरा नाम बड़ा है।
छोड़ो वही, जो जितना आधा नाम आ रहा है आधा नाम
ट्रिम कर लो यार थोड़ा, जितना आ
हाँ
सकता है आ जाएगा, हम कर लेंगे उससे आइडेंटिफाई।
ढूंढते रहे थे लोग, मतलब
बेस्ड ऑन,
सेशन।
कुछ थोड़े वेबडी रिलेटेड हैं, कुछ
कुछ थोड़े मतलब ऐसे ही है, जनरल नॉलेज भी है थोड़ी वेब डेवलपमेंट।
इसमें कुछ लिमिट नहीं है क्या?
नहीं सर, इसमें तो
और क्विज का फॉर्मेट भी एक बार समझा देते हैं, तो तुम लोगों को क्वेश्चन जो होगा वो यहाँ पे शो अप होगा, और जो उसका आंसर तुम लोगों को लग रहा है वो तुम्हें अपनी स्क्रीन पे जाके करना होगा, ठीक है।
लिखी है यार, देखिए
स्क्रीन के ऊपर पिन लिखी हुई है, तुम देख सकते हो।
हाँ वो पिन से आ जाना। अरे लिमिट पक्का नहीं है ना इसकी, कई सारे ना आ पाए या फिर गेम ना चले।
यार नाम का छोड़ दो।
स्टार्ट कर दे क्या? इतनी होंगे।
तो कुछ का पता है ना काउट कैसे वर्क करता है, तुम्हारे स्क्रीन पे ऑप्शंस आएंगे और बीच पे स्क्रीन पे सारे ऑप्शन वो क्वेश्चन आएगा, तो उस हिसाब से करना है तुम।
कर लो चलो। 244 है ना, अभी वेट कर
हाँ,
लो।
1 मिनट दे दो सबको।
गेम पेन यार लिखा हुआ है बताओ। भाई गूगल कर सकते हो कर लो।
गूगल कर सकते
मतलब
हो,
टाइम,
इसमें टाइम का होता है, जितनी जल्दी तुम
हाँ
आंसर
टाइम
करते हो
का
उससे ज़्यादा पॉइंट मिलते हैं। गूगल कर लो बट पॉइंट कम हो जाएंगे।
स्टार्ट करना चाहिए ऐसे तो मुझे लगता है
कर लो।
लॉक कर आ रहा है।
के बीच में भी लोग
कर दे स्टार्ट, लॉक मत करो किसी को आना हो जल्दी।
कर दो स्टार्ट। ठीक है फिर स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं।
और हाँ टाइम पे डिपेंड करता है, किसी ने पूछा था।
वेबएक्स पे क्वेश्चन आएगा और तुम्हारे पे
अब जो ऑप्शंस है वो तुम्हारी स्क्रीन में होंगे ना, चूज करना होगा जैसे।
हाँ तुम चूज कर सकते हो ऑप्शन, और ऐसे ही सिंगल करेक्ट और मल्टी करेक्ट रहेंगे कुछ, तो वो भी देखना।
तो
प्योरिटी ने
बूट
गलत किया है।
लैंग्वेज फ्रेमवर्क वैसे हमने इनको बताया।
अभी बताया नहीं ना वो।
ये थोड़े ज़्यादा जनरल नॉलेज।
हम्म, तो
तो
V8
सही है।
तो सैम अग्रवाल, अरे शेर सर भी कहते हैं। तो अभी इंस्पेक्ट करते टाइम पे देखा होगा तुम लोगों को 200 जो
हाँ
रिक्वेस्ट लिख
हाँ,
के आ रही थी वो।
क्वेश्चन वैलिड का था, तुमने वैलिड का कर दिया।
अरे शेर सर
ये
टॉपर।
श्रेयस
सर
गुप्ता ने पैसे गिनाए भाई।
इज द ब्रेन ऑफ फ्रंट एंड करना चाहिए था।
हाँ सर।
सही बात है।
क्वेश्चन पेपर ही गलत है भाई।
हाँ यार,
अभी भी गलत किया है कुछ ने।
तो पढ़ाया था यार हमने, ये तो तुम कह नहीं सकते।
अभी तो पढ़ा है।
सही बात है।
गर्व सर भी खेल रहे हैं।
ये गलत हो रहा है।
यार कम ऑन।
ये
एक
तो
क्वेश्चन ना भाई जल्दी।
और ये 2 पॉइंट्स का है, जल्दी आंसर करना है।
वो खाली 8 लोगों का सही है।
अरे यार ये
सही है क्या?
मैंने तो क्विज देखी भी थी यार, मैंने कैसे गलत कर दिया?
इसमें भी आप लोगों का देखो। बढ़िया बढ़िया देखो अच्छा आंसर लीडर बोर्ड चेंज हो जाता है इसमें तो करो।
हाँ एकदम से चेंज हो गया। ये तो श्रेयस सर होंगे पहले नंबर पे जिन्होंने किया आंसर अभी।
जो बंदा है, इसी ने जावास्क्रिप्ट बनाया है, इसने मोजिल्ला फायरफॉक्स बनाया है और इसने ब्रेव ब्राउजर भी बनाया है।
अब इसमें डेवलप जेएस तो क्या, जेएस तो अभी भी हो रही है तो क्या है?
मतलब स्टार्टर कोड उसका ऐसा।
10 दिन में बन गई थी।
सही है। ये बताओ।
ये तो सुना होगा वैसे तुमने।
ये तो सुना होगा।
नहीं सुना हुआ है।
सही, काफी सही।
इसकी भी एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी है, देख लेना कभी। ये भी डबल पॉइंट्स का अच्छे से करना है।
अभी गलत हुए, बात नहीं भाई। सर
सही है।
हाँ, तीर तो कर सकते हो भाई।
हाँ
तो जाना है भाव।
सही।
ये बताओ।
ले, भाई सही ऑप्शन तो दिया ही नहीं तुमने।
फोटो क्यों लगाई यार? पॉइंट क्या हुआ?
हाँ यार,
फेस
फेस
किसका
आंसर
है?
किसका
तो
पूछ
है?
भी रहे हैं।
फेस किसका है?
सर अभी भी गलत किया।
अरे
श्रेयस
भाई,
सर।
अनफॉर्चुनेटली मैंने कोई नहीं किया था भाई, गर्वित ने किया था।
कितना कम सही आंसर है।
ठीक है। ये मैं भूल गया क्वेश्चन।
अरे भाई,
हाँ ठीक है ये तो
अरे हाँ भाई,
करेक्ट है ये।
बॉस भाई।
मल्टी सिलेक्ट है ये, ठीक है? सबमिट
हाँ
करने से
मल्टी
पहले
सिलेक्ट है ये, आराम से करा।
चेक कर लेना आराम से। वैसे तुमने टाइम बहुत कम दिया यार।
हाँ सर इसीलिए कम किया ना।
ज्यादा सोचना नहीं पड़ेगा ना इसमें।
नाइस, चारों सही थे।
सही। लीडर बोर्ड देख लेते हैं।
थर्ड
अरे
पे
अच्छा ये थर्ड है, मुझे लगा मैं हार गया।
बोल्ड।
ये श्रेयस गुप्ता यार आंसर देख देख के आता है फिर।
आंसर दे भाई, तो मेरे को तो आंसर पता हो गया ना।
पता ही थे। फिर भी शायद सारे सही।
बोल्ट और ईशान कौन है भाई, बता दो चैट में ना।
हाँ लिख दो यार।
हाँ भाई, बोल्ड बताओ भाई।
लॉस्ट क्वार्क भी काफी टाइम तक सेकंड
अब
था।
मैं तुम लोगों को अनम्यूट करने का ऑप्शन दे दूं अगर
हाँ हाँ
हम्म,
कर लो बात कर
करके
दो।
सवाल पूछना।